I started this because of injury. I'm a martial artist. I train a lot of martial arts. I was competing in jiu-jitsu and leg locks were just coming on the scene. Most of us had concentrated on the upper half of the body. Well, in the early 2010s, leg locks were the rage. And I was in a competition going against a guy and he caught me in a leg lock, and I just didn't realize, I thought it was like most other submissions where you have time, to feel it, to adapt, and to tap. And of course, I'm trying to fight out of it, like any good martial artist will in competition. And I took it too far and didn't realize that the injury potential is a lot different for legs than it is for other parts of the body. So long story short, I ended up getting injured in my hip and knee. And fortunately, I didn't snap an ACL or MCL or anything like that. It was just tissue damage and tear, but it affected me in a really profound way, Dino. And because I worked so much and so much of my work was physical, I just wasn't recovering. I was just not healing, man. And so I was looking for something to make it work. I was doing ice packs all over my body when I got home at night, after training the gym. I was hobbling around, it was pretty miserable. And one injury was leading to the next, and it started to produce more or less systemic inflammation in my body. And so I was looking for anything that would help. And I hated the cold. I got to tell you, I hated it. I'm a desert man, brother. I'm a desert man. I grew up in the heat, but I couldn't do the cold. I had an aversion to it. Well, what ended up happening is that I didn't have another path. And my martial arts teacher and close friend of mine, John Bial, he was like, hey man, I'm looking into this cold training stuff. I'm reading this neuroscientist blog, and there's this crazy Dutch man. His name is Wim Hof. He's doing this, just insane shit. They call him the Iceman. Check him out. So I started researching him. I saw Wim had a book. I bought his book. I bought a copy for me and my teacher. And we started going through it, and I'm looking through these exercises, and I'm like, all right, trying to read the book. The book was not helpful at all. If anybody's ever read it, I love Wim, I love him, but that first book was not the best teaching tool. I'm trying to read it, figure it out. I'm trying to visualize the heat in the shower and just grit and burying it. I hate it. The breathing method didn't make any sense because it kind of went against everything I had trained before that for breathing in martial arts, qigong, meditations, yoga, whatever. It didn't make any sense. So I'm trying to figure this thing out, trying to do it in those old sort of patterns. And it wasn't connecting. They finally rolled out the 10-week course, the original course, and I saw the breathing method. I watched Wim on the Vice documentary when they rolled that out, and then all the pieces fell in. And I was like, all right, 2 weeks in, I'm like, holy shit, I feel profoundly different. And I looked for how can I train more? I enrolled in the first instructor training course in the US, and the rest is history, man. I've been teaching for the academy for years.
Right on.
I love the cold now. I love it.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the cold, because I'm working on it, but it's good stuff, man.
For sure, and it takes time, man. When I first got in, my legs, my thighs had so much constriction in the tissue and the vascular stuff, all that they literally bit. I would cramp like crazy if it was super cold, 15, 30 seconds max, and my legs would lock. So it took me a while, man. I had to be patient and diligent with the cold. And once I learned the priming mechanisms of how to breathe beforehand, how to relax in the cold, how to breathe while in the cold, all of those pieces made it work. You know what I mean? But in the early days, it was more like the Wild West. There wasn't as much information as there is today. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, there was a much more badassery than there is now.
Well, it was much more off the hip. You know what I mean? It was I think there's tons of badassery now. Somebody just brought up, I just had a meeting for my SR5 stuff, for my Stress Response 5 members, just right before this meeting. And the guy brought up, there's a woman that there's a documentary on Netflix, I guess. There's a woman that did 200 meters under ice for holding her breath under ice water.
I think I saw it, yeah.
I can't wait to watch this thing, man. Talk about badassery. I don't know who this woman is, but I want to know more about her. The stuff that's happening today, people are inspired the world over, and these are ancient practices. I write about it in the book where everything from the Japanese arts that include this misogi, I think is the way it's called, the Russians, the Finns, across the board, these have been disciplines that people have been doing forever. The Blackfeet Indians, they've got a badass practice where they've been going into cold rivers and lakes forever, to fortify health and strength. Or the hunters that do extremity training so that they can shoot arrows without gloves, so they can hunt better. Like, this is not a new thing, but it's resurging in a way that's like capturing everybody across all cultures and disciplines. That to me is magic. We got a great group lined up for Alaska, and I'm so happy you guys are going to be part of this. It is truly a wild and epic experience. And I'll just tell you a quick story from last year, just a year ago. We had 3 people that had never done cold training of any kind before they showed up to Alaska. Now you can imagine, people look at this and they go, they're already a little intimidated sometimes, and for good reason. Like, we're all like, we look at this, we're like, it's epic, it's a wild frontier, and that's all true. They mustered the courage. They called me beforehand. They said, am I gonna be okay in this? And I said, yes, I will guide you. It's gonna be all right. We're gonna all train at our level. Because I also had very advanced practitioners that attended last year, that wanted to do like certain, like very specific bucket list items that they asked me, can I do this really high threshold experience? I said, yes, we can get to that too. We're going to have space and room to guide. But just to tell you these 3 people. So one of them named Joe. And Joe, the first day, the farthest he got in was his waist. He ended it at the waist. He really struggled, but, it was a good win for him. Second day, he goes in the ice hole and he plunges head under. That's by day 2 after he'd learned some techniques and more experience. Day 3, he backflipped into the bottom of the waterfall, man. And he's just playing in the cold, 3 days in, and the guy's having a blast, and he's got all these new tools and confidence. I love to see these kind of things because in a retreat setting, you get transformation in a way that's just not possible in almost any other setting. Right? You can set up a curriculum, you can go to a workshop, you can have a profound experience for a day that can be life-changing in terms of the direction it sets you on your path if you maintain a practice and discipline, for sure. But there's something else that happens in an immersive environment. And these 4 days that we're going to spend together, like, we just get to spend enough time and get those personal questions answered that you really understand your body on a profoundly new level. I get really excited about that. That's my intro pitch for, I can't wait for, the next month here to happen and all of us to be together.